So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and congratulations to the gentlemen who just made it in time in this room for a not-to-be-missed session, even though it is at almost the end of a very exciting day. But before we kick off the session, let me just check in with all of you. Who has saved some energy in order to bring some energy to this session this afternoon? So please raise your hand. Who still has energy? Excellent. Okay, great. And oh, there's still some people with lots of energy coming in. Please bring your energy because we're going to kick off a discussion that is on a very important topic, because we will be diving into affordable energy for all and the role that energy efficiency can play there. And we are here on stage with an amazing panel that I will introduce to you in a second. And you still see an empty chair there because we also have a surprise guest that is just joining the panel right now. So ladies and gentlemen, a big applause for our amazing panel, please. Thank you. And before, you already gave an applause and you don't actually know who these people are, so you're a great audience. I will introduce them in a second to you, but maybe just as a scene setter. As we heard this morning, both from Dr. Birol and from Commissioner Jurgensen, energy efficiency is playing a really important role. It is actually killing a lot of birds with one stone, because energy efficiency is indispensable, of course, for the decarbonization of our economy. It is also extremely important for our energy security and for the resilience of our economies. It is indispensable to support the competitiveness of our industry. And of course, it is extremely important to fight energy poverty and to ensure affordable energy for all. And it is this particular topic that we will be diving into with our amazing panel. So we have here next to me, we have Mrs. Helena Laurent, Director General of Consumer International, and you bring invaluable information and experience on global consumers for our energy transition. So thank you so much for being here. Then we have Mrs. Zulfia Suleymanova, I hope I pronounced it correctly, Special Representative of the President of Kazakhstan on international environmental cooperation. And you are really a leading figure, and you're forging long-term decarbonization pathways in whole Central Asia. So thank you so much for being here with us today. And then we have Mr. Alex Washira, all the way from Kenya, Principal Secretary in Kenya's State Department of Energy, and you represent a country which has a track record of universal energy access and one of the cleanest power systems globally. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Alex. And then we have also Mr. Felix William Fontabella, I hope I pronounced it correctly, from the Philippines, Undersecretary of the Department of Energy. And last but not least, Mr. Greg Jackson, CEO of Octopus Energy. That doesn't need any introduction because you're really pioneering consumer-led energy innovations and digital solutions. So thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. So we will start up with a bit of an initial impulse statement from all of you. You have 3 minutes. But before I give you the 3 minutes, I will take 3 minutes for myself. Because I actually wanted to share with you, by way of introduction also, what's happening here in the European Union. And you are here really at the center of the European government in Brussels. So we actually, of course, also feel that it's very important that affordability is at the center of our energy transition. So in February of this year, we adopted an affordable energy action plan. And obviously, also energy efficiency plays a very important role in this affordable energy action plan. And we will be rolling out concrete actions. Amongst others, we will be working with the EIB on a guarantee scheme for small and medium-sized enterprises that have energy efficient solutions. And we are exploring establishing an energy efficiency certificate or white certificate market. Then also, obviously, for us, the just transition is very important. So we are working, for instance, with coal regions in the European Union to make sure that the energy transition is also just in these coal regions. We also have special support for the islands in the European Union, again to make sure that we have a just energy transition in every region of the European Union. And last but not least, we are working on a new policy initiative which is called the Citizens Energy Package. And the purpose there is that we really both protect and empower the citizens in the European Union to play a part in the energy transition. We will be launching an open public stakeholder consultation to gather ideas and viewpoints in a few weeks' time. And I would invite all of you to contribute to that. I think we can also learn a lot from the experience in other parts of the world for developing our European Citizens Energy Package. So please keep an eye open and help us to make this a very powerful package. But these were my 3 minutes. Let's now move to the impulse statements from our speakers. Maybe, Sofia, I can start with you. And maybe you can tell us in 3 minutes how Kazakhstan is really integrating the social dimension into the energy and climate strategies and how these are related to energy efficiency.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me and for compiling this very important, this very gender-balanced panel on this important topic. First of all, because we have very little time, so I'll be very quick. I'll try to be very brief. First, Kazakhstan was the first country in Central Asian region to ratify the Paris Agreement, and we were the first country to identify reaching the carbon neutrality by 2060 as our strategic goal. We remain committed to our strategic goal of carbon neutrality by 2060, as was mentioned by our president earlier this year. And therefore, of course, this is our strategic goal, and we are planning on working in this direction. And this strategy identifies different areas on how we want to achieve. Having said that, over 80% of our carbon emissions come from the energy sector, which means that for us, decarbonization is basically energy transition. And energy transition is very closely linked to the social aspects from two perspectives. On the one hand, the affordability of energy, but not only energy, not only electricity in Kazakhstan, given our climatic conditions, but also heating is very critical. On the other hand, there are cities, we call them the monocities, whose population fully depend on the production of different fossil fuels, be it coal or oil and gas and so on. And therefore, when we are speaking about the energy transition, we are thinking about the two aspects: how to make sure that we are implementing the energy transition while also keeping the prices affordable, and not only affordable, how we are making sure that the most vulnerable population are not hit by any changes in our energy system. Secondly, we are also thinking, we understand that the energy transition will be happening, it is a reality, but at the same time, what are the job opportunities for the people who are working there? And not just any job opportunities, but at least equivalently paid job opportunities, because of course we understand that the renewable sector creates more jobs, but it is important for us to make sure that I can't come to the family and say, okay, you were getting $1,000 per month, now you are going to be green, but you're going to be getting $600 per month. I don't think people will understand. And the latest research actually tells us that to make the just energy transition a reality and a success, we shouldn't be sometimes there are some policies which consider the relocation of people to, for example, to cities, to provide them with better job opportunities. But actually, people perceive these policies much more positively if we are creating job opportunities in the places where they already live. And therefore, we are thinking how to make sure that we can diversify the economies of this heavily reliant region. And this is something that our government is working on the diversification. But while we are implementing the energy transition, we're also thinking what should be our core, our baseload capacity. At the moment, it is coal, which is not very, let's say, carbon neutral. And that is the reason why President has initiated last year the national referendum, which took place in October, where we asked our people how they will feel about the development of the nuclear energy. And the majority of people said that they actually will be supporting the government in energy, in nuclear energy development, and given that Kazakhstan produces over 40% of the of the world's uranium, of course, that makes sense to us, and this is also our small contribution to the global climate action. And at the moment, we are working on the nuclear power. We started working on the development of the nuclear power plants, which will help us to decarbonize our energy sector. But while doing so, we're also keeping in mind what are going to be the future of jobs, what are the alternative industrial development opportunities, what are going to be the tariffs. Of course, we understand that very likely that with modernization, the tariffs are going to increase, but how are we making sure that the most vulnerable and people who are most needy are not negatively hit? And these, very shortly, about some of the energy-related aspects, energy transition-related aspects that the government is and Kazakhstan is implementing. And of course, energy efficiency is one of the very important components, given that almost half of our energy and heat, especially heat consumption, comes from the building sector. And therefore, really making sure that we are saving on energy helps not only to save energy, but also to save on the bills for the consumers. And therefore, we are working on making sure that these different aspects of the energy transition are well, let's say, are married together. And that is the reason why we started this year with all the stakeholders and international partners developing the Just Energy Transition Country Platform in Kazakhstan. And we hope that by COP30, we would be able to, let's say, create its structure, and it will help us to tackle different aspects of just transition, including social, economic, and environmental aspects, but also more effectively and efficiently interact and work with our partners. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sylvia. And I think we need a little applause because you remained within the 3 minutes as well. And I love the fact that you also underlined the job opportunity potential there. I think that's really very important. That's also what many people, of course, care about. And the fact that, your government organized a referendum to really, kind of like be inclusive to consult on the next step. So thank you so much for that. So from Kazakhstan, we now go to the Philippines. So Felix, it would be great if you could tell us in 3 minutes what steps the Philippines have taken to ensure that the benefits of energy efficiency and clean energy policy are equitable, distributed across all households and end users.
Yeah, thank you for having the Philippines. It's our Independence Day today.
Hey.
So, so for independence, we were forced to reflect on political independence, economic independence, and energy independence. And the third one is quite elusive. Energy independence is quite difficult. But just to give you the highlight of our core belief in the Philippines, it was President Marcos who reminded us that the cheapest energy is the energy that we do not use. And that was what he said when we were addressing the inflation issues after the pandemic. So this guiding principle reflects our commitment to energy efficiency and conservation as the most practical, immediate, and inclusive solution for achieving energy affordability and resilience. So this is in the context of the Philippines having a true cost and market-driven power system. Also, our oil deregulation law is in place where we do not regulate price. We regulate only the standards and the right metrics. So we have been working hard to transform this principle into practice by promoting efficient technologies, enforcing energy standards, and encouraging energy-saving behaviors across the entire spectrum. So we are not only cutting costs, it's also the behavior that we are addressing. We're also expanding access, reducing emissions, and building resilience. That's part of the Philippine Energy Plan. So we have a landmark legislation, the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act of 2019, which is comprehensive. We have been institutionalizing energy efficiency and conservation as a national priority, which mandates the integration of efficiency standards across the various sectors. So in government operations, we have the flexible working arrangement and the expanded use of virtual meetings and work-from-home strategies. For industry, we're promoting heat recovery systems and adoption of renewable energy. For buildings, through the modernization of the enforcement of the Green Building Code. And for appliances, we had the labeling of minimum energy performance and the implementation of an energy efficiency star rating system. The policy also emphasizes the importance of behavioral change and fostering accountability, considering again that we have a true cost system. We recognize that we're making energy efficiency as a way of life for a non-wasteful behavior of production and consumption, where every kilowatt hour saved is kilowatt hour that doesn't have to be generated, transported, or paid for. And in a time when global energy prices remain volatile and climate impact grow more severe, this approach offers stability, security, and relief, especially for our most vulnerable communities. So we target our incentives to addressing the most vulnerable. So for this, the Philippines affirms its commitment to our responsibilities with the international community. Being one of the most vulnerable countries, we offer a lot of solutions because the Philippines is rich with Filipino workers all throughout the world. We have an abundant source of critical minerals that can support the transition. And we have recently discovered an abundance of offshore wind resource, which is 7 times over what we need. So that being the case, we are offering this assistance, and the Philippines today is the vice chair of the ASEAN, meaning we will be the chair for 2026, and we're utilizing and attending all these platforms, including this one that we have today, so that we can enrich our agenda towards a more productive Philippines, ASEAN, and global community for the future.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much. A quick applause for the Philippines. Unfortunately, Savia, you will have to leave us, but thank you so much for having been here. I'll take your chair.
Yeah.
So then, because a hole in the middle is never nice. And we will be, oh, you get another applause. There you go. And now we will be moving from the Philippines to Kenya. So, Alex, it would be great if you could also tell us, what is happening in Kenya. How are you using energy efficiency to improve energy across the country and affordability? And you have already demonstrated great leadership with hosting the last IEA Global Conference of Energy Efficiency. So, please, the next 3 minutes are yours.
Thank you very much. Indeed, it's a privilege to speak today, having held our first global conference in Africa, as you have said. We were pleasured and we appreciated hosting all of you in Nairobi. And building from that, we did reaffirm our commitments on what we had agreed in COP28, where we agreed to double our energy global efficiency improvement rate by 4% by the year 2030. Again, we have revised our NDCs, the National Determined Contributions, to raise our commitment to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from 32% to about 35%. And with this, there is a greater focus on energy efficiency. and clean cooking, because those two go hand in hand. And this is a commitment to have a clear and long-term goal towards decarbonization. Again, Kenya, we have joined the cohort 2 of Mission 300 initiative, which is led by World Bank and Africa Development Bank. This initiative aims at increasing the number of households that will have access to electricity. Realize that we have about 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa that are not connected to electricity. So this one is aimed at giving us an access of about 300, halving the population. But this is a never-moving target, because Africans, we are still building more houses, and so therefore, by the time we get probably to 2030, we'll still find we are not at 300, maybe we'll be at 450, 500. So we still need more resources on power generation, transmission, distribution, energy storage, as well as, again, on clean cooking. At the moment, we are currently reviewing our national energy policy for the year 2025 to 2034. And through this policy, we seek not only to provide affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy that drives national development and economic growth, but also ensures that there is climate resilience, and also fosters competitive and inclusive energy market that attracts investments, because an affordable price right now, aware of what is happening in the world globally, then we are looking at positioning Africa and Kenya as the next manufacturing hub, because we have a good young population, educated population, a good workforce that can be able to work on industries. And this is something that we are very much committed towards pushing. Number 3 is that we are recognizing the critical role of which energy efficiency is playing, and improving energy access, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and most important is lowering the cost of industrial production. That speaks to the other point that I had made in terms of positioning Kenya and Africa as the next manufacturing hub and enhancing energy security as well. Some of the strategies that we are adopting are scaling up energy efficient appliances, adoption through enforcement and expansion of minimum energy performance standards. That is what we call MEPS and labels. We want to have all our energy appliances. When someone goes to the shop, they should be able to see, does this equipment measure up to the MEPS, and it should have a clear label so that it can be able to save them a cost or a coin or two. And realize that we have an ambitious target under the Affordable Housing Program, sponsored by His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto. And this is one of the programs where we want to ensure that we have LED bulbs in all those houses that we are building for the informal sector. To enhance access to clean and affordable energy, we are promoting decentralized renewable energy systems for areas where it is not economical to extend the grid, and this involves the deployment of solar mini-grids, integration of productive use of mini-grids, as well as standalone solar systems, and we are also incentivizing them so that we can increase access to electricity, and also promoting solar-powered clean cooking and improved cook stoves, where even with improved cook stoves, we are incentivizing them to ensure that they are affordable to Kenyans, and also those in the private sector can be able to benefit in one way or the other so that they can accelerate the drive towards clean cooking. We are also making investment in grid efficiency to reduce transmission and distribution losses through investment in smart technologies and other initiatives. And following the commitments made by business leaders, we are looking at partnering with the private sector to have more investment in last mile electrification. We are currently around 78%. We still have about 22% to go. But through the private sector, PPPs, then we are sure, and of course, development partners who have been able to help us in the last couple of years to accelerate. And finally, we're also leveraging on climate funds to finance energy projects and energy efficiency projects. Other initiatives to promote affordable energy for all include integrated energy planning. We are doing integrated energy planning for all the 47 counties that will now map the integrated national energy plan. So we want to have the county plans and we marry them to have one national integrated plan, and also capacity building, technology transfer, and most important is gender inclusive energy access initiatives and awareness to influence behavior change. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's really very impressive. And also good to, I mean, I think you have a very holistic approach, but also good to underline the importance of the public-private partnerships and attracting these private investments there. So great. So now we are moving to you, Greg. Thank you for being here. I mean, I think Octopus Energy, of which you are the CEO, is really representing, you know, a remarkable success in really driving this consumer-driven energy transition and also this out-of-the-box thinking with smart technology. So could you maybe tell us a bit more about, you know, how do you encourage consumers to embrace also these new technologies?
Thank you. I think, first of all, we need to be very careful that we don't allow ourselves to fall into the trap of believing that the energy transition is bad for consumers. Because I think the reality is the underlying technologies on the generating side of solar and wind are the cheapest forms of electricity across most of the world, and typically getting cheaper every year. I mean, solar power is now 98% cheaper than it was in 2004. This is remarkable, and it allows us to escape the volatility of the fossil fuel sector. In Europe, we experienced, just a couple of years ago, the astonishing impact of a 15x rise in the price of gas. So we shouldn't allow ourselves to believe that, you know, just because, you know, solar depends on the sun, it's less reliable than fossil fuels. It is more reliable as a partner. We just need to know how to use it in a different way. And at the same time, as we're talking about the change in generation, we need to talk about the change in consumption. An electric vehicle powered entirely by electricity generated from gas has lower emissions than a gasoline car. A heat pump powered entirely by electricity generated from gas has lower emissions than a gas furnace or a gas boiler. So the technologies that we've innovated and continue to improve on both generating and consumption side are naturally, obviously more carbon efficient, but they can also be more cost efficient too. And what we need to do is be reforming the systems in between to deal with that. And by the way, I haven't even mentioned the astonishing improvement in batteries, meaning that the cost of grid-scale batteries has fallen 90% in 1 decade and continues to fall, meaning that electric cars are now close to cost parity in most countries with gasoline cars to purchase. But if we use renewables smartly, intelligently, they're cheaper to run. I'll give you an example. I should say we operate in 30 countries. We operate in Europe, Asia, Americas, and Africa. So I bring to this a genuinely global perspective on the underlying technologies and the fact that around the world, consumers are basically got very similar interests. They want cheap, reliable power. And by the way, if it's clean and doesn't cost any more, they want that. By the way, if it costs a cent more, they're willing to sacrifice the clean. And that's why it's our moral imperative to make it cheaper, which should be easy given the characteristics. But look, in the UK, we now have 300,000 customers who've got electric cars, and they pair their car with us. So they join their app to our app, and we will set a dynamic charging schedule for every car every day. As a driver, all you do is get home and plug it in, and then we'll grab the electricity when it's sunniest, when it's windiest, when the grid's most empty, 29 different parameters. In return for this, their electricity is 3 times cheaper than the grid, and it is 6 times cheaper than petrol or diesel per mile they drive. And so I think with imagination, instead of trying to do a like-for-like energy transition, but instead creating a new energy system built around the new energy sources and the new forms of consumption, we have the opportunity to imagine reducing the cost of motoring 6x because that's what we're doing today. Now, that's just an example in the UK. By the way, we now build homes in the UK that don't have energy bills through a combination of solar, battery, and heat pump. We've built thousands of homes where we can optimize their energy consumption and guarantee no energy bills for a decade and probably forever. So with imagination, I think we challenge the preconceptions of the past. And these are not small solutions. The electric vehicle network I just described, today only 5% of cars in the UK are electric. Only half of them can do this. Over time, they'll all do it, obviously. It's currently 1.8 gigawatts of electricity we're talking about. That means at scale, we can multiply where we are today by 40. It's a 70 gigawatt virtual power plant for free that enables super cheap driving. Isn't that incredible? Now, if I look at other economies, the average price of grid electricity for example, a typical African grid is about 25 cents a kilowatt hour. It varies. But and we've got 600 million people, as Alex said, that don't have access to electricity. To generate 1,000 kilowatt hours a year of electricity through that grid today is $250 per year to meet the needs of a household. You can generate that with 1.5 solar panels. $60 of solar panels could generate the electricity to break people out of that total lack of access to energy. So that's over a 5-year period, 15 times cheaper than doing it via the grid. So wherever I look, I see the opportunities for a genuinely just energy transition, which is recognizing that we have to provide households and businesses globally with cheaper energy than they have today. And we can do that. And I think if we focus on that form of a just energy transition, we create the economic conditions for more growth, more democratization of energy, and we align the immediate interests of citizens, of lower bills, with the interests of the planet.
Excellent. Thank you for your enthusiasm. I think that deserves a little applause here. And I mean, I loved how you started by saying, we should not start by thinking that the energy transition is, bad for the consumers. So this is really, I think, very powerful and very powerful examples. Now, last but not least, we'll go to you, Elena. And it will be really interesting to hear from you in the next 3 minutes how you see the role of consumer organizations to help really accelerate a just and affordable energy transition.
Sure. Thank you so much. And I love your suit. I'm glad we're on this side of the panel. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. Consumers International, in case you haven't heard of us, is a network of 200 independent organizations across 115 countries. So wherever you are in the world, I hope you're aware of your local consumer advocacy group. That could be Which in the UK, it could be Consumentenbond in the Netherlands, it could be Adacor in Rwanda, it could be the Thailand Consumer Council in Thailand, obviously. Anywhere you go. And these are organizations that are thinking on behalf of us in the space we live in our lives where we want to be part of the marketplace. Obviously, we're many, many things. We're citizens, we're parents, we're patients sometimes. When we are a consumer, we want a fair handshake with the marketplace. And that's a marketplace that is shifting dramatically and expecting us as a consumer to understand everything from the way that energy works to cybersecurity to digital wallets to you name it. So there's a lot going on. And that's why you need a sort of a special focus on what it means to be a consumer, because especially in energy, that's changing. The way in which we think about energy, the way in which we interact with an energy market is changing dramatically, and for the better. Collectively, we would say you need a fast, fair, and accountable transition. So the faster we can go, the better from the perspective of the people who are thinking about the rights of consumers day in, day out. So why aren't we doing that straight away? Well, many, many issues, and I think it's important to start with the consumer in the room here, right? So yesterday, I think I was in Amsterdam. Who knows where I was? But we were talking about financial inclusion and financial resilience. the data about that comes from the World Bank from 123 countries is coming out in a couple of weeks, sort of before the end of June. And it looks at the financial realities for people around the world. Now, we know that the poverty trends that we've been able to rely on for the past decades, they're stalling. The international tensions aren't helping with that. And if you look at some of what a person experiences, it's very real. The vast majority of people will worry day in, day out about medical expenses. If you ask people in developing countries, can you find emergency funds? You know, that might be about $300 in India, for example, emergency funds. Can you find that in the next 30 days? 45% of people will say, no, I cannot. I cannot find emergency funds. It might be, you know, something for my kids. It might be a shock that comes in. I would not be able to manage that shock. Okay? So you've got a financial reality for people that means we have to think about that and plan for it. And then on the energy front, you've got this sort of, we have energy access, right? So 700, more than close to 800 million people who haven't got access to energy, 2 billion people who don't have access to clean cook stoves. But then you start to talk about the inequality, right? In advanced economies, 10% of people will find that 22% of their household income is spent on energy cost. Really tough. And then you get to, this is the energy poverty story, but affordability is even more complex than that. Who is able to afford those upfront costs of getting into the transition, of making that leap? It is not easy in any way, shape, or form. And so this is why, as consumers advocates, we would always say, awareness, anything that can help inform and support people in this journey, absolutely essential. We start up, we do tons of literacy programs of all kinds around the world. But in addition, things like one-stop shops. One just opened today in Chile with our member ADECU, advising people. And the key thing that people look for is advice about the financial side of all of this. But beyond that, it's then, what are the affordability schemes that we can see from governments that help you with that upfront leap into whatever is next? And how can we make sure that it is viable? And there are many, many options for that, which I can cover in the next space. So we feel this is it is probably the challenge of our times. And how do you make this work with people? Because you do it without people at your peril.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Elena. That's very well spoken. Very clear. And doing it with people, indeed, very, very important. And I also really like the fact that you underline the awareness, which is extremely important, of course. So now we're going to dive a bit deeper. We're going to accelerate a bit, actually. So you've now all had your 3 minutes, or maybe a bit more. And now we are going to be a bit more quick, because I still have a few questions on my list, and time is flying when you are talking about energy efficiency and affordability of energy. So I would ask all of you, if you could choose one key policy measure that would boost affordable energy for all, and you would make sure that this one policy measure would be implemented everywhere in the world, what would you choose? I think, Greg, you already know what you're choosing.
I'm very happy, yeah. I mean, look, we need more price signals in electricity. Essentially, in the old world, when you could just turn on a power station, you get a rectangle of power, there was very little need for price signals. But in today's world, price signals on location and on time enable us to optimize vast amounts of consumption, but also storage in the short term to get the cheapest electricity for consumers, to help with the mission that Helena outlined, and in the long term enable us to invest in the right technologies in the right places. Lack of price signals is the most wasteful thing, dragging back the transition and putting costs up. I would say that I think, you said that has to work everywhere. That particularly applies in the parts of the world that have got large regulated grids and universal access. In other parts of the world, it's the ability to start building from the bottom up as well as the top down, so we can create a very efficient grid that starts in a decentralized manner and over time will centralize. In both cases, it all needs digitalization so we can manage it intelligently and smartly.
Beautiful. Your policy measure. Who wants to go first, gentlemen?
Yeah, thank you. So I think I emphasized true cost. So true cost covers a lot of things, but in the Philippines, we're also looking at externalities. So the first step as we journeyed to the energy transition is that 24 years ago, we passed the Electric Power Industry Reform Act. It's basically telling everyone that nobody will pay for your electricity except you. And then here comes the taxation, wherein the fossil fuels based technologies will be taxed more. So there we have the proxy carbon taxes, because when we do dirty fuel activities, it results to more health issues, health costs, and environmental costs. Thereafter, we pursued a Renewable Energy Act, where we provided incentives for renewables, emphasizing that the upfront costs will be more difficult for consumers to bear. And in the Renewable Energy Act, we have strategies for aggregation. We have strategies to enhance more consumer options. So the consumer options included own use, especially in the off-grid. Then we have the net metering. Then we have the green energy option, where consumer can choose a supplier that is different from that of the distribution utility. And then the retail competitive open and access. And then we have the directly connected customers. More importantly, all consumers will have to share in the transition towards renewables. So we have the renewable portfolio standards. And then recently, we passed the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act, considering that the first fuel that we have to consider in addressing the transition for affordability is the discipline, the choosing of the right appliances, the designing of the building in the right way that will be non-wasteful. And good thing, we have AI to incorporate and think for us to be smarter in the use and combining all technologies. So lastly, the most important is IEC, Information Education Campaign, especially for the Philippines, where 18 years old and below are more than a majority in our demographic. So that's how we look at things. It's integrated, and it's basically the true cost policy considering the externalities.
Absolutely. True cost policy there. So now, if we go to you, Alex, one policy measure that you could implement, what would you do?
Thank you, Rosalinda. It is a little bit difficult to have one policy spread across the world, the globe, for one main reason, because we are grappling with different challenges wherever we are. If I look at Africa, for example, one of the policy measures that we need to look at and implement is on the issue of PPAs. Our PPAs are mostly in foreign denominated currencies, and it's for one singular reason. The funding of the PPAs is on hard currency. It is either in euro or it is in USD. If there was a way that we could cushion the developing countries, that they can be having the locally denominated PPAs. If I go to Uganda, it should be on, the PPA should be on Uganda shilling, Kenya shilling, Zambian franc, Zambian kwacha, etc., etc. That is one thing that I believe would help in lowering the cost of power. Number two, again, still on the costing, is an issue, universal issue of taxation. where if you would have one universally accepted rate of taxation, and in any case, we may not need to tax electricity because we want to increase access and affordability. Last but not least, because of time, is an issue of open access. Why am I talking about open access? And in this case, not country-to-country open access. Once, for example, Africa, we are looking at having a single electricity market by the year 2063. In East Africa, we have the Eastern African Power Pool. South Africa, they have the South African Power Pool and Western African Power Pool. If we can be able to have an open access where if Ghana, for example, once they put up their nuclear power plant, if they can be able to sell to Kenya at a much lower cost, we should therefore be able to access that power on an open access. And any industry can be able to set up an industry in Kenya because of their own reason and use the power from Zambia, from Ghana, from Morocco, from Egypt, etc., etc. If we can be able to have that, that would be a game changer. Thank you, Zarina.
Thank you. So, same question for you, Elena.
I would love to see something where we start from the consumer. I say the consumer because I'm coming from Consumers International, but maybe it start with people. What's really interesting is wherever you go, seeing a recognition of the need for a technical change, which tends to come top down. And we're only now starting to think about how do we bring people into that. We need to flip that and start with the need of a person who may not think about energy at all. They may think about, the fact that their medical bills are one of the biggest worries on their mind. And, here that links with air pollution. Air pollution is now the second biggest cause globally of premature deaths. So that brings you into a story about energy. And so I'll wave that because this is, it's a blueprint for action on just and inclusive energy transitions, which the IEA has done an amazing job of putting together with a group. And I believe they're launching now. I hope I'm not stealing any thunder whatsoever, but please do take it and read it because I think it starts to put on the table, well, what might that look like? And how do we bring everybody along with us so that you start to get a sort of a virtuous circle. You start to get a tipping point where we see that this is possible with great approaches from business and government that we're seeing here, and with people calling for that change.
Excellent. Thank you so much to all of you. I think that was very, very clear. And I would like to, because I think this is really a very, positive energy panel, don't you think? Yes. So I would like to continue with this positive energy here. And I would ask you now, and again, we are in acceleration mode here, looking at the time. Could you share with us something that you think has been a really successful example of incentives that have been given in order to ensure affordable energy, in particular for low-income households? So really something that you were like, wow, this is so powerful. And we should talk about this so that others know about it and it can maybe even be replicated.
Yeah, very happy. I mean, look, I gave some great examples earlier of generic stuff like how cheap it can be to drive an electric car with smart use of renewable energy, how you can eliminate energy bills. That applies, by the way, for affordable housing, social housing, private housing, because it's about the technology rather than how rich the participant, the owner is. But I think there's a couple of things that we have experimented with which have been mind-blowing. During the energy crisis, the price of gas in Europe increased 15-fold in some countries, 15x. For every household, that was difficult, but for low-income households, it was unmanageable. And so we worked with the British National Grid, and in, I think, just 6 weeks, we introduced a program which allowed households to sign up. And at times when the grid was most under stress, we would pay those households to use less energy just for 1 or 2 hours. Our company had 4 million customers with working smart meters at the time in the UK. 1.6 million households signed up for it. So nearly 40% of all our customers signed up to participate. And all they got was a text message or an app notification or an email 3 hours to 24 hours before grid stress, asking them, telling them that we pay them if they use less between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. or whatever. On each occasion, up to 3/4 of the people signed up did so. And it was easy. All they did was shift their cooking by an hour, use a microwave instead of an oven, take the dog for a walk, or indeed go to the pub. And if you know about Britain, getting paid to go to the pub is the ultimate offer. And the interesting thing then was, as an economist, you look at this and say, what is the substitute behavior for these flat-priced grids? And if it turns out the substitute behavior is free beer, you suddenly discover we've got a very exciting approach to cutting energy costs. Now, on a serious note, the UK normally spent £400 million, so $500 million per year, having coal power stations on standby to handle a few hundred megawatts of extra demand at those times. This program cost $20 million. It was 20x cheaper than paying coal for standby that you don't use, and it put the money in the hands of consumers. And the last bit of this is not about energy geeks. It appeals to households in the same way that buying a special offer in a supermarket does, right? And when you go in a supermarket, you don't have to buy the special offers. But enough people do that it reduces food waste, that it makes a more efficient food system. They get the benefit of super cheap food, but everybody gets the benefit of a more efficient system. And I think, back to Elena's point about thinking about consumers, we shouldn't assume that meeting the needs of consumers is about building ever more expensive infrastructure, when very often we can let the consumer be a participant in the system and get better value that way. And my favorite bit of all of this was we set up a WhatsApp group. 400,000 people joined that WhatsApp group in a matter of a few weeks. And whenever we said there was a special offer on electricity, the load on our servers was like when Taylor Swift tickets go on sale on Ticketmaster. It was astonishing to see the interest.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing these really inspiring stories. Let's move to Alex.
Kenya. Thank you. I'll keep it short and simple, though, for interest of time. I'll give 2 or 3 things that has been done in Kenya that I can say are game changers. Number 1, deliberate investment in last mile connectivity. That has enabled Kenya to move from 23% connectivity to 78% currently in 14 years. So that is one thing that I would say is the game changer. Number 2, we do have a band, a tariff for the low-income earners, where if you use 0 to 100 units, then your price is much lower and without taxes. So we call it the Lifeline tariff. Then, of course, we also have another program that we are implementing, and this is thanks to the private sector, the pay-as-you-go financing for the standalone solar systems. And twined with that is a program that we are calling Kenya Off-Grid Solar Access Project that is meant for the 14 underserved counties that are not connected to the grid, where we are giving incentives to those standalone solar system providers, incentives to connect those customers. And then lastly is on cross subsidy. Let me mention something here when I talk about last mile connectivity, is that when we come to a certain village, we do not check who has 1 bulb, 2 bulbs. We connect everyone in that village, so that because electricity is not only we call it an enabler, because we have seen areas where once we put up electricity, then you can see instant transformation in terms of job creations through SMEs. So that is one thing that I would say that we have been able to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah. Well, we keep on debating with our National Economic Development Authority, because the true cost is the one that pushes the right behavior. If somebody else would pay for your electricity, like my daughter, the tendency is for her not to turn off the lights or keep the TV on because she does not pay for it. And so if that would be the government paying for somebody else's electricity, that will be the result. However, to break that problem, we have pockets of economic zones wherein we allow an additional deduction of 100% of electricity cost. Because sometimes in a country, the electricity cost is subsidized by dirty fuel activities, but not in the Philippines. But to enable us to break through that problem, we have economic zones that allows an additional 100%. So if you have X amount of electricity cost, your deduction is 2X. Now, I think what we focused on is more on the non-fiscal incentives, like for electric vehicles, like what you mentioned, Greg, earlier. We have the green routes, wherein the internal combustion engines will be under a number coding scheme where they will be allowed to use the road, whereas except for electric vehicles. That's one. The other non-fiscal incentive is the must dispatch or priority dispatch of renewables in our wholesale electricity spot market. Why? It's because most of the time the variable renewable energy will have to be utilized immediately. So even if it's a bit more expensive, it has to be dispatched. And when we have that system, you need not have a power supply agreement with a variable renewable energy. So we also have the green auctions to fix the problems within the system. So the government would call for auctioning a certain kind of technology, for example, pump hydro storage, so that we will avoid more use of battery energy systems, because we have pump hydro storage, which is an RE battery. So I listed down one more. It's the Energy Efficiency Excellence Awards. It's the bragging rights of malls, hotels, in exercising energy efficiency. And with that, we attract more tourists to go there because they're practicing what they preach.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. That's all very inspirational. I'm sure you can add something to that as well, Helena.
Absolutely. I think that there are some really interesting examples where the benefits of carbon pricing coming back can be then allocated to lower income households. And that sort of making sure that you can see that this change is fair and transparent can be really powerful. I'm going to sound like I'm plugging IEA reports, but there's a very good list of interesting interventions from I think the first report of its kind about affordability and access for green energy that they did in 2024 as we started to see this. But I'll tell you something that never gets into any of the reports, and it's the quality of the conversation between people going through that and the policymaker and the regulator. We find that we've tried to measure this to the best we can, and across the 100 countries, it was 80 actually, the 80 that gave back decent data, we could see that if you had quality conversation, as we go through crazy changes and we're trying out many, many different things, if you have good, solid, robust, real conversations at regular times with consumers, you start to get that feedback loop and you start to learn. And the countries where that happens, you have better outcomes for consumers and you have better, you're seeing really interesting opportunities for growth. So I think that's the intervention that would be really powerful for us all to think about. How are we getting the quality conversation about what's going on here as we all learn? Because, to the points heard here, there are many pathways and we're going to have to work it out together as we go.
Excellent, thank you so much. I mean, speaking of quality conversation, I think this panel was a very high-level quality conversation. We are almost at the end, unfortunately. So let me just, have the last concluding remarks, but I'll keep it very simple because a lot has been said here. We've heard a lot of inspirational ideas, both from the government and also practical ways in order to make sure that we have affordable energy for all. And I think we are all in agreement that affordability must be really hardwired into the energy transition. It's not a nice to have, it's an absolute must have. And I'm sure we will be, learning a lot still from each other and moving forward to spread good practices across the globe. I think it's very clear that we need to put the people first. We need people-centered energy transition, and people are not just passive subjects, but active agents of change. And I think this quality conversation, I think, is something very, very important that we need to continue. And obviously, we need to continue to have partnerships between governments, between companies, with the consumers in order to move forward together. So I think today's session has added really a real momentum to the wider agenda that came forward with the Global Commission for People-Centered Energy Transitions. And it also reinforces the belief that clean energy future can and will and must be built with starting with the people first. So let's continue to learn, let's continue to listen, let's use the networking opportunity that we have today at this amazing event. I would like to ask all of you to have a warm applause full of energy for our amazing panel. It was really great, thank you so much.
Well done.
Thank you. And now I would like to ask all of you to please all stand up. Thank you.
Oops.
And now please all sit down again, because we will have a last keynote. So this is very exceptional, because normally keynotes, as you are used to, are in the beginning of an event. We now have an amazing keynote also at the end. So please take your seat again, and I'm handing over to Brian, wherever you are. Brian, over to you. And thank you again for an amazing panel. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you very much, Rosalind.